This is the world of Salesforce and Dropbox, HubSpot and Evernote, a world unthinkable without cloud software services. Most businesses and consumers use SaaS every day to get work done. Driven by the internet and ever-expanding availability of bandwidth, SaaS has come to dominate our lives in a very short span of time. But developing a defining service, often ahead of its time, getting users to engage, secure funding, protect IP, and building a truly remarkable and successful SaaS is not an easy task. SaaS Stories brings conversations with the dreamers and visionaries who dared to think ahead. How they built their SaaS, genesis, struggles, trials, tribulations, and eventually success. Welcome to SaaS Stories. Thank you for your time and for joining us on this session. I have a favor to ask. While you continue to listen to the podcast, please leave a comment or rating at iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I personally look at each comment and will give a shout out to each of you in our next episodes. It means a lot to hear from you. Welcome to this third episode of SaaS Stories. Today we have with us Karthi Mariyappan, co-founder and CEO of Hippo Video, a personalized video distribution platform.
So we strongly believe in video is the next segment. So it was earlier sort of a trend for people. Now it has become an essential skill. So we see a bigger opening there. So we wanted to capture the mind share of the people. So we are strongly working towards that. And of course, all the video companies are working towards that. So we are pushing ourselves faster than that. And we have done a recent tech breakthrough where we could bring down the cost of personalization less than 12x. About what we did earlier, which was again 5x less than Vidya. So such amount of cost leverage we are able to bring because of technology. And we are seeing a good adoption because of that in video as campaigns. Except for mid-market or enterprise being on pause, but SMB has been a bigger trove coming into us. A lot of people are adopting. So I would say people have started reimagining what sales is. They are moving to virtual selling. And for that, videos is going to help them a lot. So we have seen a huge, you should say 10x adoption in our platform in the recent days.
Karthi, an alumni of University of Madras and XLRI Jamshedpur, was a part of Zoho since the days of AdventNet and has worked with them for 15 years. In 2016, Karthi founded Hippo Video and is heading product management, marketing, and support. Hippo Video is a personalized video distribution platform that helps you easily create personalized videos and distribute them through multiple channels. As a company, they emphasize on making videos accessible and easy to use. Now, on to this surprisingly open and insightful episode with Karthi Mariyappan, co-founder and CEO of Hippo Video. Karthi, welcome to SaaS Stories. I'm delighted to have you on the show. Hippo Video is a great story, actually. And I'm really waiting to know how you sort of traveled this path and how you reached where you are today. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks Subhanjan for having me here. And it's good to talk to people like you and tell about our story.
So tell me, how did the Hippo Video journey start? You were in Zoho for a long time. And Zoho is a big success story, no question about it. Why did you decide that it was time for you to leave and start something of your own?
Yeah, so we were working in Zoho, the three founders, myself, Srini and Neelam. We were working in Zoho for 16 years, from 2000 to 2016. And as people know, Zoho is a breeding ground for a lot of entrepreneurs. So even we have been called part of Zoho Mafia. So thanks to Zoho, especially in that way, because every team there, you can think yourself as a small entrepreneur, where you have your own budget, everything, you have to go find it out, success, kind of. So we have been breeded that way. So that entrepreneurial bug was within Zoho, and we wanted to move out on our own. We were discussing certain ideas, and thanks to inspiration like people like Girish or Rajaram and all, it was a great influence on us to try on our own to deliver something better software to the world.
So when you decided that you will leave, I'm assuming that you were not worried about financial security. So when you went and told your family that I'm deciding to now leave Zoho, which is this rocket ship, and I'm going to start on my own. What happened?
It was really tough part on that, say, especially with the family with two kids, growing up kids. Each of the founder had two kids, and we were very well settled in Zoho. A nice job, nice challenges, etc. Of course, financially we were also very well settled. So moving on, it took a lot of time, understanding ourselves, the needs, the projection, planning we need to do for the organization, for our own self, assuming what happens if you don't get any funding in the 2 years, what we will do. Kind of lot of pre-planning went ahead. And of course, thanks to the family and friends who came in at the right moment to fund us initially and get started was a bigger part there.
Great. So I'll also step back a bit. Before you went to the family, how did three of you decide that yes, three of us are going to do this startup? I mean, when did it happen? Was it like some brainstorming? You were having a cup of chai, or what? What was happening?
So actually, we three were into different teams basically at Zoho. So I was into Zoho Recruit, Neelam was into Zoho Sheet, and Srini was into the frameworks, SaaS framework. But we three were thick friends. Of course, we have other friends who are still there, and we used to talk about different things in life, etc. And we three actually had complementing skills. So I was into product management strategy, while Srini is an CTO, clear-cut tech guy, can crack things. And Neelam is an operations guy as well as a scale guy. He knows how to level the field, get it growing. So we three actually complemented. So that gave us a lot of confidence. And we discussed a couple of ideas, brainstorming, and then we decided into LMS to start up.
So what
Primarily
were the... Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
So primarily because I was into HR, so LMS was a natural extension.
Right.
So that's how.
And what were the other ideas you guys were brainstorming at that point?
So we were brainstorming a couple of other ideas as well. One of them was more into what I would call as an app for connecting people based on some Groupon inspiration then.
Okay.
So kind of ideas also we tried. Then we did an what I would call it as an onboarding part alone. That also we tried, just an onboarding. So we had a couple of ideas being discussed.
And how much money did you guys decide that you'll need to pull in, and how did you pull in that initial cash?
So the initial cash, so we thought we'll have a runway, a minimum of 18 months.
Okay.
So we had our mindset of like how the team will be split. Of course, the three founders will not take any salary for the 18 months was the initial idea. Then we thought like we'll have a like team of 5 or 6 people. So we had an early budget of like how much it may take. So maybe 3 to 4 lakhs per month was our initial idea. So we had an corpus of around 80 lakhs.
Okay.
When we started off. And it was pulled from our own pockets as well as some of our friends were angel.
And so what happened in these 18 months? What did you plan and what did you achieve?
It was totally different actually.
Right.
So we initially started off with LMS as I sold. So we built the quiz component part of it. Then we built the learning management software, the builder, then the course delivery, all those things. Then we went ahead and saw the market, etc. We felt that video is an important trend rising up, but none of the LMS had the video part where tutors or the trainees can record videos. So that is when we started looking at some of the existing players, like importantly, Kaltura. So we went and saw that, like we even talked to them, and it was a shocker for us because he gave me an estimate of like 10,000 API calls. That means 10,000 recordings of some, I don't remember, some amount of minutes was $50,000. We didn't have that much money.
Of course. And this is which year? This is 2017?
2016 end. Almost.
Okay, fine.
So we did not have that much money, but we strongly felt that is going to be a clear differentiator. So our tech architect, we told him like what could be done. So he said, give me 2 weeks, we will try something. And that is how we came up with that video component ourselves. And when we actually started doing demos or talking to people, etc., people were more interested in the video part than in the LMS.
Right.
Unfortunately, that moment of time, like 2016, etc., EdTech market was not a favorable market for anyone. And it was too crowded, and only enterprise was adopting. So, coming from a background of Zoho, we wanted to break that and bring the LMS into mid-market availability as well as assembly availability, but nothing like that happened. It was again into enterprise only we need to push ourselves. So that was the time when we decided, okay, why can't we try putting this as a separate product? Of course, we discussed with our mentor, Girish, and people like them. And they suggested, okay, let's do a parallel track and see what happens. So what we did was, out of the 9-member team, 2 of us, me and the tech architect alone, started working on this. The rest were working on that. So we came out with this product and put it outside, and then rest is what we are here. In the
Okay.
sense, it was immediate opt-in, I should say.
So when you decided that it was what was the product that you could record your video and store it and send it, or what was
Yes.
it?
So the initial version, we call it as a recording version.
Okay.
Basically, you can capture your video through your laptop and screen record as well,
Okay.
and distribute it where we serve the video from our own servers.
So it is sort of like a Loom
Yes.
that time,
Yes.
at that point.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was working through what? Through a Chrome extension or something?
And Chrome extension was another interesting story. We initially had only web version of it.
Okay.
And one of our common friend, so he was talking to us and asking, like, he was having his own startup. So he was talking to us on what is that you're doing. Then he suggested, can you try in Chrome extension? Because he was coming from the education background. So he suggested, try to put it in the Chrome extension store, write it as in Chrome extension. And that again opened a floodgate.
Right, right. So tell me, I mean, just we'll step back a bit. When you were actually positioning the LMS and you were talking to enterprise while also showcasing this feature that you had at that time, which was inside your LMS, what was your go-to-market strategy? How were you finding them? Who were you going and pitching? How were we doing that part?
So this LMS part, as I said, we initially thought it as an wanted to play an SMB in the mid market. We
Right.
could not. So we started going behind a lot of enterprises through common contacts.
Okay.
That is how this education friend also came into
Okay,
it.
okay.
So we sort of contact based only we were able to go
Okay.
initially, because with the level of funding we did not have field sales.
Right.
It is the 3 founders who roam around the city, going around to Bangalore kind of things
Right.
we used to do. Kind
Okay. And what kind of companies were these?
of. Mostly software industry.
Okay. So tech industry, and you are basically going and meeting their HR,
Yes, HR heads,
training,
or
L&D.
CHROs, yeah, L&D mostly.
So when two of you went out and created this standalone product, what did you now do?
So once we started doing that, we found one interesting use case that came up immediately. Actually, Zarget co-founder, Naveen was the person. So the first 5% we chose was one of them. So we went and showed him, this is what we are building. So he immediately came up with a use case where they were finding it tough to explain issues or record issues from their customers. So support use case was the important use case. And we were also having that in mind. And immediately people, when we started talking to multiple people, they were immediately able to relate it, and they were willing to pay, open the wallet for that.
And so you figured out. So Zarget, you are showing them as what were you presenting him as? What were you positioning the product at that point when he said, "Oh, I can use this for support"?
So we positioned it as like explaining your solution.
Okay.
The agent can explain the solution,
Okay.
as well as ask the customer to record what's the issue and send it across.
So it was still a support case. I mean, you were
Yes.
still doing it for a support case.
Yes.
And so then what happened? Then Zarget told you this, and then what did you do?
So then what we did was this extension we had put, and it opened the floodgates. We had multiple use cases coming in. So people were asking in education, like for teacher assessment providing or students recording their assessments, support, internal collaboration, some sales use cases, and somewhere like students recording it for their gaming, YouTubers, kind of. and some freelancers who wanted to talk about their story to their clients. Kind of different use cases came in. So that was the immediate advantage we had by providing it as a Chrome extension.
I have two questions now. One is that how were these people finding you? And two, why do you think they started use you and not use something like a Loom or a Vidyard or any of those other extensions, which were already sort of spending a lot of investor money in publicizing and promoting and marketing?
So what we did was in June 2017, we had done that product hunt. So that was one important area. We opened up different use cases. And we actually positioned ourselves, the SEO part, the product part, everything, as a multiple recording scenario like Use Loom. Then it was called Use Loom. Then Screencastify was there. So we had positioned ourselves as a screen recording, free screen recording. And we positioned strongly on the Chrome extension. So immediately within like 10 or 15 days, we became the top 5.
Okay.
Because of some good reviews. So what we did was, whoever reviews it, we gave them free.
Okay.
The premium version.
Okay. Okay.
So that kind of started increasing the reviews.
Okay. So what happened? So you launched on Product Hunt. So let's talk a little bit about the Product Hunt launch. So Product Hunt launch, typically anybody can go and put a product, and then you get hunted by somebody who is already having followers. So what did you do actually?
So we had a very good friend, Kevin Williams. So he is a great hunter, and he is the number one hunter in Product Hunt.
Right.
So we came to know through him like SaaS Boomi event. When we were attending that, we came across him. We had a nice chat. So then we told him like we are building something like this. Then he only introduced us to Product Hunt.
Okay.
It's the other way.
Okay.
So he got very much interested in our product offline. Then he said, you can go ahead with the Product Hunt. So that's how he hunted us down.
Tell me about some numbers. Now, through Product Hunt, so this was your first major public sort of exposure, right? Which was not driven by contacts or known people or circle or any such thing. This was like unknown territory, unknown people looking at your product and your brand for the first time.
Yes.
So what kind of numbers did Product Hunt generate?
So actually Product Hunt gave a couple of interesting things. One, a valid customer base coming and reviewing it. So we had around, if I'm right, 480 upvotes around on the first day. So which was very good, decent amount, I should say, at that point of time. So that gave us confidence. And we had a couple of interesting contacts. We were able to track them down, understand, talk to them, provide our product for evaluation, kind of. So that also opened up on the business part.
Okay. So how many people did sign up through the Product Hunt according to you?
That was around 130, if I'm right.
Okay, that's good. That's very good. And of these, there people are coming and writing reviews and all of that.
Yes.
Okay. And so at this point, was it a priced product or was it still a sort of a freemium kind of model?
When we went with Product Hunt, we had a pricing.
Okay. And what kind of pricing was that?
It was like we had two pricing. One was monthly and then yearly. Monthly was around $5. Yearly was around $30 something.
Okay, that's very, very, very reasonable. So why? So at this point, what was happening with your competitors? I mean, so-called competitors, Vidyard or BombBomb or any of these. Were they your competitor then, or that time you were focused on some other?
Okay, that was an evolution part. So we did come across Vidyard immediately when we started researching the video market. So before we opened up the product, we went ahead and studied what role we wanted to play. So one thing was very sure, we did not want to place ourselves as a small tool or a feature on something existing. So we wanted to position ourselves as a platform for videos for businesses.
Okay.
So, but we did not open that as platform for business, but we said for support. So that time, I think 3 months before, Loom had positioned themselves as only a tool, video recording tool. So we were very clear that we should not position ourselves because we had thought about Kaltura, we had thought about Brightcove, Vidyard. So that was the aim there. But we did not have the features to match them. But that was our goal then.
Then what happened? Were you now getting ready? How far have you spent your 80 lakhs that you had by now?
So by June 2017, we were almost done.
Okay.
We were almost done. We had like 3 or 4 months of runway. Then only we went for the seed round.
Okay.
It was done by KE Capital.
Right. And how large was that round?
So round was around less than $1 million.
Okay. When you raised that money, how much did you allocate towards marketing and how much was towards your maintaining of the team? And
So marketing, we did not allocate much on that because we were very sure the product is the key. So we wanted to build the product. So most of them was allocated for the product building. So marketing, we were positioning ourselves, coming from Zoho's background, we were all strong in content, SEO kind of. So we started building a marketing team specifically for content, etc. Even
Okay.
today, we are very strong in that. SEO.
okay. And how large is your marketing team today?
Today, it's around 14 people.
Oh, that's nearly 1/4 of your
Yes.
entire team.
Yes.
I believe you are about 66 people
Yes, yes.
now, correct?
Yes.
So 14, yeah, that's quite good. It's time for a short break. Hippo Video decided that they wanted to create a reasonably priced option to one of the leaders in the category, Vidyard. I asked Karthi, why were people signing up? Was it because it was priced lower or because of the positioning as a support tool? Karthi explains as we come back from the break. Stay with us. You are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end. Welcome back. Right before the break, I asked Karthi, why were people signing up? Was it because it was priced lower or because of the positioning as a support tool? Here is how it unfolded. You had set your target that you will build something like Vidyard, and you had a product which didn't have as many features, so you were reasonably priced so people can try it out and all that. So what has been your learning there? So as people were signing up, were they signing up because it was cheaper product or because you're positioning as a support tool?
There we had one important problem. So there we had been actually made thin, I should say, in the sense we had education coming in, we had support coming in, we had freelancers coming in, internal collaboration. Instead of focusing on one, we started doing features for all four.
Okay.
That period of time. So that was a big mistake at hindsight. We should have still focused on business alone, but we let ourselves driven by the customers. That point of time. That 6 months or 8 months, we were building it for education, we were building it for support, we were building it for freelancers and for premium as well. So we were driven in all the ends.
Okay.
Then we had to regroup ourselves and say, no, we will focus only on the business part and focus directly at people like Vidyard kind of people, not just an layer in between, Bloom or Vidyard. So we wanted.
What actually happened? I mean, was it that you were spending a lot of time and there was not a lot of success?
So, to give you an example on education, it was super initial traction, but if you wanted to scale it up a little higher, you need to do a field sales. That was not our cup of tea then as well. That was one problem we had. And by spreading ourselves too thin, the product was not growing fast, building those essential features for businesses.
Right.
So that was a caught in between.
Okay. So when you focused on business, where was the focus still on support or you are now thinking of other elements of the business?
Yes. We started building the marketing features, like basically the hosting kind of features, tracking analytics, all those things we started building.
Okay.
So that was the second segment we started building.
So after this 8 months is now over and now you have refocused yourself on the business cases. How is your sign up happening now? Is it through that same marketing content driven inbound or are you doing something else?
So we did not start our paid marketing till late of 2018 or early 2019, I should say.
Okay.
So till that time, we were focused more on SEO as well as this freemium.
Okay.
So we built a freemium product,
Hmm.
and we had a very good branding from that. So we did not cut down the education or other segments, but we had branded ourselves in all those videos or wherever they distribute, kind of. So that kind of spread the word for us. So that is how we started getting a lot of traffic to our system. Okay, and kind of this market category, which is sort of new. Though people may think from outside there are too many players, no, it is not so. So you can segment it into three set of people. One, the legacy players like Kaltura, Brightco people who are all majorly into OTT hosting
Right.
kind of.
Right.
Then you have the Vidyard kind of people who are trying to edge out the existing legacy leaders. Only one, I should say, Vidyard, etc. Then the lower players who are trying to do one particular use case,
Like who?
like Loom, BombBomb, or even Bonjaro. Everyone had one particular use case as their reporter. But we wanted to position ourselves as a video platform for business. As I said, from initial thing itself, we were sure we wanted to become the video platform. So that kind of actually made people look for videos, and there were lot less players that they can rely on. And we were among that top 5 or 10 from the initial days itself, because the market was just booming up. So that was the case. And
Okay.
it really helped us.
Okay, so 2019, we are in 2019 now, and your positioning is clear. So, what kind of users, paid users, were you having at this point, early 2019?
It's mostly SMBs.
Okay,
Mostly
and
SMBs.
and it's global.
Yes, mostly US. 85%, I should say, from US.
How did that happen? How did you market yourself to the SMBs in US? What was the thrust for that?
So the thrust, as I said, the paid marketing did not help us much. So we did not venture into that. So it was mostly content driven, influencer marketing. We had a lot of webinar series coming up in the 2019 period. So we started creating that thought leadership kind of activities.
Okay.
So which directed a lot of traffic to us. And the second important one was integrations.
Okay.
So we did a lot of integration. Like if you see our product today, we have around 70 integrations in our product, right from support systems, help desk systems like Freshdesk, Zendesk, Intercom, you can name it, or email systems, Outlook, or Gmail, or even any other email systems you can think about that was there. Then we had CRMs. So we had different segments attached to it. So we had traffic coming in from that as well.
Okay, so in the integrations you did, and you went into their app marketplace and you listed there.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
whole exercise you did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the influencer marketing. How did that work?
So influencer marketing. So we initially started off understanding like there was one important switch we did. We moved from support marketing to sales focus, sales workflow focus.
Okay.
So that was a huge thrust we set inside our marketing itself, not focus on total business per se. That was another important learning.
Right.
Within the business itself, we were spreading ourselves too thin.
Right.
Then we said, okay, which is the important use case people are coming for? So we listed, we understood our data, understood our customers, we had some interviews, etc. Then we decided sales workflow is one important focus area we want to work on. Then we decided how we want to get ourselves out in the market. Then we started approaching the influencers in sales,
Okay.
primarily from the US, etc. Talking to them, bringing them to our webinars, or we participating in their webinar kind of activities. So that was
Can you name some of them? People who are
John Barrows, Jeffrey Gitomer, Jeb Blond,
okay. Okay.
Amy Franco. They were.
Okay. Okay. All the known names. I mean,
Yes.
I have been talking to some of them as well. So how many users did you have this early 2019 when you were rolling out all these exercises, and you are now focused on the sales component? How many users did you have at that time?
So when you talk about users, we were around 400,000 users, including the free and all.
Okay.
So there was a lot of traffic, inbound traffic.
Okay. Okay.
But if you look at the customer base, it was into hundreds, SMBs.
Okay. But each will have multiple users, right?
Yes, yes.
So of this, what would be the like? Will it be in like thousands or 10,000s, or how many will be your paid seats?
No. It's into hundreds only.
No, hundreds is the company.
Even it was average for like 2 to 3 users.
Okay. So it will
We
be
were
less than
targeting
1,000.
SMBs. Yes.
Okay. And at this point, how much pricing were you at? So from
So the
$30
pricing-
annual, where have you come now?
So we were into $19 per month.
Okay, that's per month. And annual?
Annual was around, we had like $190, 10
Okay.
months.
Right. Okay. Per user.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So at this stage, now that you have got some traction, you have lots of freemium users. What did you do next to bring it to where you are today?
So one important, as I said, sales workflow was one. Then we started building our own personalization engine, basically, because from the start we understood to penetrate the videos into the market to make it more engaging. So video by itself is more engaging than your text.
Correct.
But how do you make it more relevant was the biggest question. So we built our own technology, our own full stack technology, wherein you could personalize the videos with the data about the user, bringing in relevant content for the user. These two were important tech breakthroughs we did. So that was the other important aspect. So we built a vertical stack like the basic framework, which is editing or whatever it is. Then we had built the workflow, and above that we brought in the personalization layer.
Okay.
So that brought in a big change for us in the mindset of the people who is approaching us. So it was not a price game we play. It's more of how engaging we are able to deliver the videos.
So when did you decide that, okay, now to sort of push it into the next orbit, we need to bring in personalization? And what kind of thoughts were there which sort of helped you to, because you are the product person, product visionary, then
So
Hippo
one
Video.
important aspect that we wanted to do personalization was, of course, on the what is the current problem the sales users are facing is basically they wanted to stand out in the thousands of emails they want to outreach, and even if you send out video, how do you actually make them the recipient believe like they have taken some effort to understand me?
Right.
So that kind of personalization we wanted to bring in into the system. And the personalization per se actually helped us move upscale into mid-market as well.
Okay.
So that was the two reasons we started building the personalization.
And how did you sort of decide to execute it? What was your solution that you built, which sort of...
So we are a tech-first company or a product-first company, you should say. So we started building the product by interviewing people, etc. Then we did some couple of beta to a couple of our existing customers, understood whether it is fine for them, whether it is delivering value for them, etc. Once we did that, then we announced the launch of it, the personalization launch, by sending out emailers, doing some of our own LinkedIn posts kind of thing.
Okay.
That's how we started.
And so, and how does it actually show up in your product? What does the product do to personalize it? For example, if I want to send you a video, what would Hippo Video allow me to do?
Okay, so it will. We have different types of personalization. So when you want to send me a video, the video, of course, will have your face, whatever it is. Or if you are sending an explainer video, you can include the text about me, the transactions I did with you earlier, kind of activities. Some images you can send it.
Okay.
Some videos also personalized. To give you an example, we are working with an OTA. So the use case is they want to do campaigns where someone has dropped off the funnel. They know some details about them, what kind of details they had. Now that goes inside the video.
Okay.
Each of those person gets the destination different, the costing different. So destination means images or videos. Costing is basically the data. So all those we are personalized for that particular person alone.
Right.
That is how we started.
So where are you today? How many users and what's your MRR or ARR, whatever you can share?
So we are nearing that million range now.
Okay.
ARR, not the MRR.
Right.
ARR range.
Okay.
But our focus has been strongly into the SMB till date.
Okay.
So we are breaking ourselves into the mid-market recently, and unfortunately, with the COVID, everything has been on the past for now.
Right.
But we are seeing a good pipeline building in that angle, I should say.
Right. Right.
The users have crossed thousands.
How did your focus on SMBs actually work out? Again, I mean, I'm again going back to the marketing question. That was it because of the content you were building, they were very SMB focused, or was it because your initial traction was in SMB, so word of mouth was helping? How did your focus on SMBs work actually?
So focus on SMB, primarily SEO,
SEO.
content. Content was the key.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the content a bit. What kind of planning did you do initially, and who was actually doing it? Was it you or someone else? Or
So we have our head of marketing, Nikhil. So he was himself an entrepreneur.
okay.
So he had that verb to go into content. So we were coming from Zoho. We know
Right.
content is the important pillar.
Yeah.
So we started building it early itself. When we
Okay.
started building LMS itself, we were very strong in content.
Okay.
At that time itself, Hippo LMS was ranging in the first page for
Okay.
LMS.
Okay.
So we started having a different team. So one working on blogs, one working on health, one working on the outside contributions, one working on going into Quora kind of activities. So we did a lot of content activities.
So typically in a given month, what all are you producing today? How many pieces of content? How many pieces of videos? How many Quora questions
So blog articles around 5 to 7
per month?
per month.
Okay. And these are all like long form or short?
Long, mostly.
form. Okay.
Mostly long.
Okay.
Mostly long. Then LinkedIn post, we have a separate SM guy, so who sits and creates a lot of content. Then Quora, we'll be answering like hundreds, I should say.
Okay.
So that kind of activity also do. Then the content distribution as well. We write for some other people,
Okay.
give it to them, post in other important sites, etc. So that also we have a person.
So these are people who are basically focused on video communication or sales, either subject or
Yes,
technology, right?
yes.
Sales
will be the primary segment, then video as a sub segment.
So where are you headed now? What is COVID going to do this year? And what do you see? Where do you see yourself, say, 6 months from now?
So COVID, except for mid-market or enterprise being on pause, but SMB has been a bigger trove coming into us. A lot of people are adopting. So I would say people have started reimagining what sales is. They are moving to virtual selling. And for that, videos is going to help them a lot. So we have seen a huge, you should say 10x adoption in our platform in the recent days
Wow.
of creation of videos, etc.
Okay.
Traffic has increased like 4x.
Okay.
So that amount of traffic is coming in because of COVID.
And what about conversion? How is that impacting conversion today?
The conversion remains the same almost.
Okay.
Whatever we had earlier. There is not much of improvement in the conversion per se.
Okay.
So we are working on that.
Sure. Okay. But obviously more people are coming in and more people are checking it out, more people are using it. So some amount of stickiness would somewhere help you convert. I mean,
So,
I think.
yeah, earlier if 100 people came, X were converting. Now 1000, 10x. So
Right.
that X is happening,
Right.
but not the conversion percentages.
Got it. That's great. So what is your now plan for the next 6 months? What are you guys focused on?
So we strongly believe in video is the next segment. So it was earlier sort of a trend for people. Now it has become an essential skill.
Right.
So we see a bigger opening there. So we wanted to capture the mind share of the people. So we are strongly working towards that. And of course, all the video companies are working towards that. So we are pushing ourselves faster in that. And we have done a recent tech breakthrough where we could bring down the cost of personalization less than 12x about what we did earlier, which was again 5x less than Vidya.
Right.
So such amount of cost leverage we are able to bring because of technology. And we are seeing a good adoption because of that in video as campaigns. So that is sales videos, then you have videos in campaigns. That is one thrust area we are focusing.
Okay. And for the next 6 months, you want to focus on that?
Yes.
And what kind of revenue growth are you looking at, or are you sort of focusing on getting?
We are focusing on getting a lot of good logos into the system for the campaigns.
Okay.
That's our immediate focus for the next.
Right. So you have enough relevant reference points and
Yes.
referrals and stuff like that. Okay. So what do you see the next opportunities? If you were starting up today and you are not heading Hippo Video, what kind of areas would you be looking at?
Of course, going back to our own starting point of LMS, we
Okay.
see now LMS market, EdTech market in per se is on the rise.
Right. So is it temptation that let's go back and rebuild that product?
No. Actually, we engineer one of the world-class product. We provide them video solutions, basically.
Okay.
Kind of satisfaction that way.
Sure. Karthi, thank you so much.
Yes.
But okay, before I let you go, would you like to say something that I've not asked?
One thing for sure, whoever the listener is, one thing, as an entrepreneur, you keep having your ears open, eyes open everywhere, because there could be different opportunity coming up, which could be adjacent before or after whatever you're doing. Catch on to that. Not everybody has stuck to the original idea. There are only few people. So people should have the mindset of pivoting whenever it is necessary. That's
Great. And that triggers another thought in me. So I'll have another question for you.
Sure.
You had some good mentors.
Yes.
I'm sure you mentor some youngsters today. What
Yeah.
is the role of mentors in helping a startup become successful?
So here I would like to talk about my mentor, Girish. So one thing I learned from him as a mentor was he did not provide us tactical ideas. It was more of strategical ideas and left us for us to find ourselves some answers. It's not like giving answers to them, but giving some strategic posts. These are the posts you will come across. These are the things you should take care. So that was very helpful. So play your own play, but still get some guidance.
I have this discussion with lots of friends who are in investment and who are running startups and so on. Disproportionate amount of attention is given to fundraising and very low attention is given to revenue.
That's all will be changing now with the COVID coming in. Already we see that change wherever we go for some webinars or seminars, etc., where people are talking about profitability. That's a good sign. That's an important sign for everyone, including the entrepreneurship community, because we have to serve as a business which is profitable.
Great.
SaaS Stories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink enables high-quality interactions between buyers and sellers through presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create personalized sales presentations and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversation. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 990-216-3132. That is 990-216-3132.
Karthi, that's a great point to end this. Thank you so much. I would love to continue to talk to you as your, maybe in 6 months we'll talk again and see where you are and some more learnings that you may have. And thank you very much for being open and sharing and answering all my questions without any hesitation at all.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best and thanks for coming on the show.
Coming up in the next episode is another in-depth and data-rich conversation with Rishi Kulkarni, co-founder of RevSales.
We have a conviction of what market needs to go towards or where a user experience needs to be. And here is where there is a process that we can put in place to discover a market and solve the problem. Right? So largely it's like a combination of these 2-3 things, wherein a strong belief on how we can execute, conviction of what's broken and what we want to fix, and just the ability to execute it in terms of process. And that's how RevSales started. So it really didn't start with a problem statement in mind. It started with more of a process in mind, and that's where me and Sami started in 2018.
We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations featuring Shruti Kapoor of Wingman, Jagat Iyer of Vidphone, Ravi Trivedi of Push Engage, and many more. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening. SaaS Stories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform, SaaS Insider, the definitive community for global SaaS, and is a Bizcast original production. Thank you for being with us today and listening to this episode of SaaS Stories. This is where I speak with the dreamers and visionaries who dared to think ahead and build world-class SaaS products. We hope this conversation helped you with the insights that you can go and apply right now to your own SaaS journey. We hope to have you here with us again in the next episode of SaaS Stories. SaaS Stories is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. SaaS Insider, the definitive community for global SaaS, and is a BizCast original production.